you so much for taking the time to view this video. So if you are watching this video, I know that you are feeling a lot of stress and overwhelm with having too much stuff. And what happens sometimes is that a lot of us, we can find a story for everything that we own. There's a memory behind it, there's an emotion behind it, or perhaps we have a use for everything. So I know some have a really, really great knack of like anything that may even be broken, or it's just not, you haven't used it in a long time. We can say to ourselves, you know what, I could use that for this, this, or this. And so we find it really, really hard to let go. And that's what holds us back. And so that's where a lot of the stress and the guilt can come sometimes, and the shame and the overwhelm of having too much stuff. And then you start getting really hard on yourself, right? And you can't understand why you feel like you're the only one that this is happening to. So, and it's not. And that's what I love to help people to realize their full potential of being able to release themselves from their stuff. So let me introduce myself first. My name is Louise Hopkin. I am the owner of the Space Reclaimers Home Organizing. So I have been a home organizer for about 5 years. And when I first started out, I wasn't really 100% sure or didn't really understand, I guess, the whole ins and outs of it. So I did think that I was coming into people's homes, I was going to make things look pretty, and that's it. But what I discovered and what I found was my true passion, and where I really found I helped people the most, was having those conversations with them, guiding them, talking to them, giving them some rules and guidelines on how to stop collecting stuff. So that's now what I'm turning my passion towards. So I still help clients in-house as well. But what I really want to do is help people online so I can reach more of you. And it's also at a more affordable price too. But the thing is, it's actually a process. And that's what like a lot of us kind of think, or some of us tend to think, is that it's a quick fix. And it's not. It really isn't. It's something that will take time, and it's a process. You need to be held accountable, and you need to have that support group, which unfortunately sometimes does not come with friends and family. You may hear them saying, why don't you just get rid of your stuff? Why don't you just why can't you do this? And it's really disheartening to you, you know, as a person. And that can actually break that emotional bond between you and that person, because you're like, well, it's not just stuff to me. Then it makes you feel guilty, and then you start that whole cycle all over again, right? So what I do with my Reclaim Your Space training course is I teach like the base foundation. So I have 3 steps that I go through. And what that is so I liken it to, it's not very original, but to building a house. So to build a home, we need a really good, solid foundation. And actually, I just went through this experience myself. We just moved into our new townhome. Watching the process is really, really interesting, because it actually looks completely different from the finished product while it's being built, if that makes sense. So we need to start the base foundation. We need to have that solid. So what I do for that, for step 1, is finding your reason why, and also to clear that brain clutter. We have so much brain clutter. When we have actual stuff, it affects our brain, and it then becomes, we can find it hard to focus. We're not living in the moment, and it's really, really hard to push through that. And so what I do in the first part of the course is that we'll work through and say, okay, let's clear the brain clutter. So that can be going through your schedule and how to fine tune that. And so what I'd like to do is, I do call it trying to lead a more simple life, which I know is easier said than done, but let's have those tools to make that simple life, which makes us onto step 2. So the next part is, I guess, the framing work, right? So the framing work is where we need to learn and understand why we're collecting clutter. And then we need to have rules and guidelines to help us through that process, because it is a really, really big emotional thing and it's really overwhelming. Having rules and guidelines in place to stop you from collecting clutter or to help you minimize actually takes a lot of that stress and pain away. Obviously, it's not completely, and don't get me wrong, it's not an easy process. I know that totally. So with the rules and the guidelines, it could be something like, okay, if you're going to go shopping, you need to use the 1 in, 1 out rule. There's the 2020 rule that I love that came from the minimalists. So the 2020 rule is if it's costs less than $20 and it's less than 20 miles, I guess they use miles, we're in Canada, to drive, then it's okay to let go. It's not going to cause a catastrophe or a knock-on effect where you're not going to be able to recuperate from it, right? So that's for minimizing. So it's those things, if we have them in place, if we have them front of mind, if we have them access to them, we use them as our tools to minimize. And then what I like to say, and organize. Then the third step, I guess, is like when the whole house comes together and it looks great. Now that you've gone through that whole process of understanding your why, understanding the emotional triggers, clearing the brain from clutter, and then actually going through and having rules and guidelines. So now you can, you've minimized, you've stopped collecting stuff. Then the third layer, when it all looks pretty, is to actually now put it all together. So now what we want to do is we want to maintain it. Okay, so that's where our routines come into place. So routines, I know they're kind of like yawn factor, right? Like it sounds boring. And you know, I used to be quite against routines. That's just me. I was like, routines, that's kind of boring. And when I was younger, I was more carefree and you know, roaming. I roaming the country and the world. I traveled for like 10 years. So I had a backpack on me, and so I led a very minimalist life already. And then when I came to, so I'm from New Zealand originally, then when I came to Calgary, with my Australian husband, and we had our son who's Canadian, so we got a nice mixed house. So we, when I had a son, when I had my son, and then when I started working full time, and then I started working on this part time as well, I'm like, this needs to change. We have no family here. I need to have routines. And so what I got really good at was making those tweaks. I was always revising it until we found something that worked really well for us. I probably drove my husband insane, because I think, you know, every week or 2 weeks it was like, you know what, how about we change and you drop off our son to daycare, I go to work, then I can come home early and get Liam and then have dinner ready, then you could come. It was just it was just always tweaking. And so I learned how to kind of tweak. I learned what would work for people, what would work for us as well. So I now incorporate that into helping others. So routines are super, super important because it keeps us accountable. It'll hold us to it. And the thing is, the more we do them, the less time you have to spend doing them, which is our end goal, right? We want to create more time. We want to save money, and we want to be able to make really good health choices. So once we've done that, we have this pyramid, or we have this home. So we have a great foundation. We have the framework, and then we have the roof, I guess, too, right? That helps. The roof and the outside all looks pretty, so it all comes together. Now, another thing about my style is that I'm not really Pinterest pretty kind of looking organizer. That's not what I'm about. I'm about real life and understanding that when you have kids, you're going to have some stuff. You're going to have things in miscellaneous bins. You're going to need that. But at least it's contained. It has a spot. You're not tripping over it. And it's a quick cleanup, right? That's a really key when you have kids, whether you're working or not. It's really key to be quick and have that done and dusted, and then you move on to the next thing. So that's what I'm talking about, and that's what this course is really all about, and what this, I call it training That is what it is going to help you do, and that is its aim. So I want to inspire calm into your life, which again, I know it's not always possible, trust me. And that's the other thing I love too, is being very, sometimes in this world you have to be reactive. Example, what's going on right now. But the thing is, being proactive really, really helps. And that's what's going to be key to keeping you organized. So that's what the rules and the guidelines are going to be. They're going to be proactive. And then say if something happens in your life that, you get sick. Because we know how often when you get sick, if you are the mom of the household, people don't know what to do and it kind of all falls to pieces. So what happens is that when you get better, you feel like you've got this massive shambles to clean up. Well, with having rules, guidelines, and routines in place, there's a couple of things that can happen. The family will keep those routines up and they'll keep the rules and guidelines in place, but they may not be perfect to what you would have done. Admit it, sometimes that happens. The great thing is, though, is that it will be a super quick time to get back to where you want to be, because at least they're following something. It's not just kind of all turned to shambles and everything's laying everywhere, right? The second thing is that they could be following them perfectly. And then you're like, this is great. I will be sick all the time. And I guess, I should say the third thing that could happen too is that they don't follow it at all. They have no concept, they're not interested, they're still in training to try and get them on board, because that's a really big part of another piece of my training, is that I want family to be on board too. I want them to be involved. I want the young kids to the middle kids to the big kids to all be part of it, and the hubbies, the partners, the wives, whatever, everybody needs to be involved. I do like to say that one person should run it. One person should kind of have the whole picture, the whole goals, the whole what the running of it should be. And so that is what I think is really, really important, but having everybody on board. And then what will happen is if they don't follow anything and they're still, like I said, still in training, it's still going to be an easier or quicker process to catch up than what it would have been before if you have nothing in place. And that's what I find, if something happens in life, then that's what happens. And then you struggle to catch up. And then it just kind of keeps piling up and piling up and piling up. And then you end up with those piles, right, all over the house. And that's where you just get really frustrated. All those emotions and feelings come in again. So this is what's really great about this training. It's really going to set you up for future long-term success. It's not just a quick fix. It doesn't say you need more storage space to hide everything, because in the back of your mind it's still there. So that is what I truly believe in, and that is why this training, when you come out of it, you will actually feel probably more than likely a little overwhelmed. You will be like, whew, that was a lot to learn, Louise. But you're on track and you're on fire and you now have direction, a plan, and you're just like, okay, I can do this. So that's the great thing about it. And also with it, you have my support too, okay? Then we have a Facebook group that will help you if you have any questions, or if you're just having one of those days where you're like, it's not working for me, or those weeks. And then you have that support to say, hey, you're not alone. So going back to that, so the three steps that I teach, that I think is the foundation of everything, is, so the foundation, we have the foundation is learning your why, clearing your brain of clutter, which I sound like I have clutter right now. Then the second step is the framework. So that's where we're going to dig deep and we're going to go into rules, guidelines, and then that will help you minimize. Then the third step is that we're going to go into, is going to be to organize and maintain those routines and schedules. So they're the 3 steps. So we've got 1, 2, 3. And then after that, so that's not it. In the training, we have 5 modules. So in the so that'll be the first 1 to 4 modules. Then in the last module, what we're going to do is we're going to go through how to get the family on board. And we're also going to create a basic organizing plan. So that's super exciting. So I know a lot of us want that. We need the tips and the tricks and ideas. So it'll be a basic organizing plan and organizing skills. So to understand how, when I come into someone's home, how I kind of think about it, how my mind works. And yes, it is usually easier when it's not your stuff. But the thing is, you've gone through and you're minimized. So 9 times out of 10, when I go to somebody's home or when I help them or do a DIY plan or virtual organizing, what happens is that most of the time, after we've minimized, after we've gone through that process of how to let go, and you've gone through and done it, you don't need any more organizing products. And the organizing is actually a lot easier, quicker, and clearer to do. So it's really exciting. I love that part. That's actually the fun part. Sometimes, a lot of the time I go to a client's home, I might even be there to help them minimize. And then what happens is we've got a plan, or they already know, you already know really deep down kind of what you want to do, but it's getting from the foundation to the complete house is the hardest part. So that's where you need the help, right? And then a lot of the times they get to do the organizing. They're like, I know how to do this. I've got it. So that is just about my training and kind of what it's all about. So I hope that really helped you. And just to give you some ideas and tips as well. So rules and guidelines, how it all works. And I know you'll walk away with this. You'll have a good understanding of the training. But my challenge for you now is to actually walk away after this video and go to a room in your house and picture it without all the stuff in there. So how do you feel? So actually what you should do is, the first one is look at that room. How do you feel when you can see all of that clutter, when you can see all of that stuff? And then close your eyes, picture that room without that stuff in it. Does it create a calming effect on you? Because that is what we're looking for. It doesn't have to be picture perfect. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect. It needs to be as close as we can get, and so we can inspire that calm for you. So that's the other thing. If you wanted to find out more about me, you can head to my podcast, which is Inspiring Calm Podcast. It's on Apple and Anchor and a few other places. You can listen to it. And that's where I'll be going through some more ideas, talking about my acronym as well, which is reasons. So the top 6 reasons of why we collect clutter. I'll tell you really quickly now, actually. So the top one is retail therapy, emotions, assigned time. I have to spell it again. S for sentimental, O for overwhelm, and the N is for no, can't say it. They are the top 6 reasons throughout my 5 years, all my research that I've done working with clients, of why we collect clutter. So more often than not, you'll have 1 to 3 of those reasons will really stand out to you, and you'll go, yes, that's me. I can really, really relate to that. So those, and that's another thing we'll dive deep into. So then we kind of go, okay, if you are attached to if you have emotions, which, don't get me wrong, is different from sentimental, right? So they're 2 different things. Emotions could be, speak from Marie Kondo, this sparks joy, or it could be actually even guilt because you broke up with someone from a relationship that wasn't a good one. So you're holding on to it to remind you not to do that again. Then sentimental is from a piece that has been in the family for generations, and just there's a whole different issue that lies around that as well. So okay, so I hope that's been a really, really helpful overview of it, and I would love to see you in the Reclaim Your Space training. If you have any questions at all, send me a DM, email, whatever it is. DM me on Instagram at The Space Reclaimers. You can email me, info@thespacereclaimers. I am happy to answer any questions because I truly, truly believe this is something that will help you, and working together, it will be the release that you need, and to create that home that you desire, to take that chaos and chaotic and mixed emotions and the guilt and overwhelm that you have. So we take that away and we replace that with calm and really positive energy. Okay, again, thank you so much, and I hope to hear from you soon.